The research station Kithara floated in the darkness of space like a small metal island. It spun slowly around a dying red star that gave off barely enough light to see by. The star had been burning for billions of years, and now it was getting ready to die. This made it the perfect place to study how life could survive in the harshest conditions in the galaxy. Gunho pressed his face against the observation window in Lab 7. He watched the red star pulse like a slow heartbeat. The light was so dim that it looked more orange than red. Sometimes he wondered what it would be like when the star finally died. Would it just fade away slowly, or would it explode in one last burst of light? Still staring at that old star, Mira said as she walked into the lab. She carried a cup of coffee that smelled like real earth beans. Coffee was expensive this far from home, but the supply ship had brought some last month. "It is fascinating," Gunho said without turning around. "The star is dying, but it still supports 3 planets. One of them even has basic plant life." Mira sat down at the workstation next to his. She was the communications officer for the station, but she often came to the labs when her shift ended. She said the alien crew members made her nervous sometimes. Not because they were dangerous, but because they were so different from humans. "Any interesting samples today?" she asked. Commander Velter brought back some crystal formations from the 3rd planet. "They seem to grow even when there is very little light. Kithara thinks they might be alive." Kithara was the chief science officer. She was a crystalline being from the Nexus Collective. Her body looked like it was made of living glass that changed colors depending on her mood. Right now her body was deep blue, which meant she was concentrating hard on something. The station had crew members from 12 different species. Most of them had been exploring space for thousands of years before humans even invented the wheel. The Saurian hegemony had been traveling between stars for over 50,000 years. The Nexus Collective was even older than that. Humans were the newest members of the galactic community. They had only been in space for a few hundred years. Most of the other species thought humans were interesting, but not very important. They were polite, but they did not take human opinions seriously. "I still think we should set up a research outpost on the 3rd planet," Gunho said. "The crystal formations might be a completely new form of life." "You suggested that to Commander Velter last week," Mira reminded him. "He said it was too dangerous to send a team to the surface. He said that because he thinks humans cannot handle difficult conditions. But we evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us every day. We can handle a little radiation and cold weather." Before Mira could answer, the communication system started making noise. A soft chime echoed through the lab. Then Mira's personal communicator started beeping. "This is Mira. What is the situation?" "Report to the communications center immediately," came the voice of Boran, the security chief. Boran was a gaseous being who looked like a cloud of green smoke with glowing eyes. His voice always sounded like wind blowing through a tunnel. Mira looked at Gunho. "Something is happening. I should go." "I will come with you. Maybe they need a xenobiologist." They walked through the corridors of the station. The walls were made of a metal that could change its properties depending on what the station needed. Right now the walls were showing a soft blue light that helped people navigate in the dim light from the dying star. Communication center was at the heart of the station. When they arrived, they found most of the senior staff already there. Commander Velter stood near the main display screen. His reptilian features looked more serious than usual. His scales were a dark green color, which meant he was worried about something. Kithara was there too. Her crystalline body was now flashing between different colors rapidly. This was something Gunho had never seen before. Usually her color changes were slow and deliberate. "What is the situation?" Mira asked as she took her position at the communication console. "We received a distress signal 15 minutes ago," Commander Velter said. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "The signal came from an uncharted system approximately 40 light years from our current position. Distress signals are common, Junho said. Ships break down all the time in deep space. Several of the alien crew members looked at him with what might have been amusement. Among the Saurians, this was shown by a slight tilt of the head. Among the crystalline beings, it was a quick flash of yellow light. "Play the message," Commander Velter ordered. Mira pressed several buttons on her console, the speakers filled with static and interference. Then a voice came through. It was speaking in the universal language that all spacefaring species used for emergency communications. The voice was filled with terror. It was hard to understand because of the static, but some words came through clearly. "Systems failing. Cannot maintain orbit. It is coming. The pale worm comes. None can stand before it. All our ships are gone. Our cities are silent. The pale worm sees all. The pale worm judges all. None can stand before it." The message repeated 3 more times and then cut off into static. The communication center became very quiet. Junho looked around at the alien crew members. Their reactions were strange. Commander Velter's scales had turned almost black. Kithara's body was now a pale white color, and she was making a high-pitched humming sound. Borin's gaseous form was contracting and expanding rapidly, like he was having trouble breathing. "What is the pale worm?" Junho asked. The question seemed to make everyone even more uncomfortable. Commander Velter looked at the other senior staff members. They seemed to be communicating in some way that humans could not detect. "It is an old legend," Kithara said finally. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but now there was a tremor in it. "A story told to young ones to teach them about the dangers of growing too proud." "But legends do not send distress signals," Junho pointed out. "No," Commander Velter agreed. "They do not." Borin's form contracted into a tight ball of gas. "The albino dragon," he whispered. "The silence bringer. The final lesson. You are frightening the human," Kithara said to Borin, but Junho noticed that her own colors were still pale and worried. "I am not frightened," Junho said. "I am curious. What exactly is this albino dragon?" "A creature from the dark times," Commander Velter explained. "Before the great alliances were formed, before species learned to work together. It appears when civilizations become too advanced too quickly, when they forget their place in the cosmic order." "And what does it do?" Mira asked. She had been listening quietly, but now her voice showed she was also curious rather than afraid. "It teaches them humility," Borin said. "It reduces their proud cities to silent graveyards. It turns their mighty fleets into drifting debris. It shows them that there are forces in the universe that cannot be conquered or understood." Junho found this explanation fascinating rather than terrifying. "How does it do this? What are its capabilities? Has anyone ever studied it scientifically?" The alien crew members stared at him in amazement. Commander Velter's head tilted so far it was almost upside down. Kithara's colors flashed rapidly between white and yellow. Borin's gaseous form expanded to twice its normal size. "Study it," Commander Velter repeated slowly. "You want to study the albino dragon?" "Of course," Junho said. "If it is real, then it must have some kind of biology, some kind of method for doing what it does. Knowledge is how we solve problems." "Some problems cannot be solved," Kithara said softly. "Some forces are beyond the understanding of any single species." "Maybe," Junho said. "But we will never know unless we try to understand them." Commander Velter looked at the navigation display. "I am setting course for the nearest inhabited system. We will report this incident to the Galactic Council and let them decide what action to take." "What about the distress signal?" Junho asked. "Should we not investigate?" "Investigate," Borin said. His gaseous form was now vibrating with what looked like laughter. "You want to investigate the albino dragon?" "Someone should," Junho said. "If there are survivors, they might need help. The alien crew members looked at each other again. Then Commander Velter spoke in a voice that was trying to be gentle. There are no survivors when the albino dragon comes. There never are. 3 hours had passed since the distress signal arrived. Commander Velter had ordered the station to change course toward the nearest inhabited system. But Junho could not stop thinking about the message they had received. Someone or something had been calling for help, and they were just going to ignore it. He found Mira in the dining hall. She was sitting alone at a table near the observation windows. Most of the alien crew members had gone to their quarters early. The few who remained were speaking in quiet voices and kept looking over their shoulders, as if something might be watching them. "This does not feel right," Junho said as he sat down across from her. "What does not feel right?" Mira asked. She was stirring her soup, but not eating it, running away. Someone sent that distress signal. They might still be alive. They might need help. Commander Velter knows what he is doing. He has been in space for over 200 years. We have been in space for less than 10 years. Junho looked around the dining hall. Usually it was full of conversation and the sounds of different species sharing meals together. Tonight it was almost empty and very quiet. The few aliens who were there seemed nervous and afraid. "Have you noticed how they are all acting?" he asked. Mira followed his gaze. At a table near the far wall, 3 members of the Nexus Collective sat together. Their crystalline bodies were all the same pale white color. They were usually different colors when they sat together. It was how they showed their individual personalities. "They are frightened," she said. "But why? It was just a distress signal. Even if this albino dragon is real, it is 40 light years away from us. Maybe it is not the distance that matters. Maybe it is something else." After dinner, Junho went back to his quarters, but he could not sleep. He kept thinking about the terror in the voice from the distress signal. He kept thinking about how all the alien crew members had reacted when they heard about the albino dragon. It was like they all knew something that humans did not know. At 03:00 hours station time, he got up and went to the observation deck. The dying red star looked smaller now that they were moving away from it. Soon it would just be another point of light in the darkness. He found Mira already there. She was standing at the main observation window, looking out at the stars. "Could not sleep either?" she asked. "I keep thinking we should do something. We have the best sensor array in this part of the galaxy. We could at least scan the system where the distress signal came from." Commander Velter would not approve. "Commander Velter does not have to know. We could run a passive scan. Just look at the system from here. See if there are any ships or structures left." Mira was quiet for a long time. Finally she nodded. "The communication array has access to the long-range sensors. We could run a scan from there." They went to the communication center. The night shift officer was a young member of the hegemony named Kos. He was sleeping at his station, which was not unusual. The night shift was usually very quiet. Mira sat down at her console and began entering commands. The long-range sensors were designed to detect communication signals across vast distances, but they could also be used to scan for large objects and energy signatures. "I am getting something," she said after a few minutes. "The system where the distress signal came from. There are definitely artificial structures there, or there were." "What do you mean were?" "The energy signatures are very weak. Like everything is powered down or damaged." Junho looked at the display screen. It was showing a 3-dimensional map of the distant star system. There were several planets and what looked like the remains of space stations and ships scattered throughout the system. "Can you get a more detailed scan?" Mira adjusted the controls. The image became clearer. What they saw made them both stop breathing for a moment. The system was full of debris. Thousands of pieces of metal and plastic drifted in space around the star. Some pieces were as big as buildings. Others were so small they barely showed up. On the sensors, those are ship fragments, Junho said. Hundreds of ships and space stations. Look at the orbital patterns. There used to be at least 12 major installations around the third planet. Used to be. What happened to them? Before Mira could answer, the sensor display started showing something new. At the edge of the system, something was moving. Something very large. What is that? Junho asked. Mira increased the sensor sensitivity. The object became more visible, but it did not look like anything they had ever seen before. It was huge. Bigger than the largest ships in the galactic fleet. It was long and curved like a snake or a dragon. And it was moving toward their position. It is leaving the system, Mira whispered. It is coming this way. How fast is it moving? Mira ran some calculations. At current speed, it will reach our position in approximately 18 hours. 18 hours. We need to tell Commander Velter. Tell him what? That we used the sensors without permission. That we detected something we do not understand. That it might be the albino dragon from the old legends. Junho thought about this. Commander Velter had made it clear that he did not want to investigate the distress signal. He had also made it clear that he thought humans were not experienced enough to make important decisions about galactic threats. We need more information first, he said. Keep scanning. I want to know everything we can about that object. For the next 2 hours they watched the long-range sensors. The object continued, moving toward them at a steady speed. It was definitely artificial, but unlike any ship design in the galactic databases. It seemed to bend light around itself, making it hard to get clear images. There is something else, Mira said. I am detecting gravitational anomalies around the object. Space itself seems to be warping near it. That is impossible. Only the largest stars can warp space significantly. I know, but the sensors do not lie. As they watched, the object came closer. And as it came closer, something began to happen to the station. It started with small things. Equipment that usually worked perfectly began to malfunction. Lights flickered. The gravity generators made strange humming sounds, but the more disturbing changes were happening to the crew. Junho and Mira could hear them through the station's communication system. Members of different species were calling for help or reporting strange dreams and visions. Medical bay to bridge, came a voice over the intercom. We have 17 crew members reporting severe anxiety and sleep disorders. They all started at approximately the same time 2 hours ago. Engineering to bridge. We are experiencing minor system failures throughout the station. Nothing critical, but the pattern is unusual. Commander Velter's voice came over the intercom. All senior staff report to the bridge immediately. Junho and Mira looked at each other. They were not senior staff, but they had information that might be important. We should tell them what we found, Mira said. They will not listen to us. But maybe we should go to the bridge anyway. When they arrived at the bridge, they found chaos. Half the alien crew members were there, but they all looked terrible. Commander Velter's scales were now completely black, and he was shedding old scales all over the floor. This was something that only happened when Saurians were under extreme stress. Kifara was there, but her crystalline body was flickering between colors so rapidly it was hard to look at her. She was making a constant high-pitched whining sound. Boran was the worst. His gaseous form kept changing shape. Sometimes he looked almost solid. Other times he spread out so thin he was barely visible. What is happening to everyone? Junho asked. Unknown psychological pressure, Dr. Seville answered. She was the station's chief medical officer and a member of a species that looked like tall, thin birds. All non-human crew members are experiencing severe anxiety, nightmares, and panic attacks. The symptoms started approximately 2 hours ago. What about the human crew members? Commander Velter asked. No symptoms reported. they appear to be completely unaffected. Junho and Mira exchanged glances. 2 hours ago was when they had detected the object moving toward them. "Commander," Junho said, "we may have some information that could help." Commander Velter looked at him with eyes that were bloodshot and wild. "What information?" "We ran a scan of the system where the distress signal came from. We detected something large moving in this direction." "You did what?" Commander Velter's voice was a roar that echoed through the bridge. "We detected an object of unknown origin. It is approximately 18 light hours away and moving toward us." The bridge became completely silent. All the alien crew members stared at Junho and Mira with expressions of pure terror. "Show us," Kefara whispered. Mira transferred the sensor data to the main display. When the image of the serpentine object appeared on the screen, several of the alien crew members made sounds of fear. Commander Velter fell back into his command chair. Boren's gaseous form contracted into a ball the size of a basketball. "The Albino dragon," Dr. Seville whispered. "It is real, and it is coming for us." "How long do we have?" Commander Velter asked. Mira checked her calculations. "At current speed, 16 hours until it reaches us." "All hands," Commander Velter announced over the station intercom. "Prepare for emergency evacuation. All non-essential personnel report to escape pods. Essential personnel prepare for immediate departure." "Wait," Junho said. "Should we not try to learn more about it first? This might be the greatest scientific discovery in galactic history." Every alien on the bridge turned to look at him. Their expressions showed that they thought he had lost his mind. "Learn about it," Commander Velter said slowly. "You want to learn about the albino dragon? Of course. Knowledge is how we solve problems, how we improve, how we grow." "Some knowledge," Kefara said in a voice like breaking glass, "is too dangerous to possess. Some problems cannot be solved. Some forces are beyond the understanding of mortal minds." "Maybe," Junho said. "But we will never know unless we try." 12 hours had passed since Commander Velter ordered the evacuation. Most of the alien crew members were now in escape pods, or had already left the station in the few small ships that were docked. The ones who remained were only staying because their duties required it, or because they were too paralyzed by fear to move. Junho and Mira had refused to leave. They said they wanted to study the approaching entity and gather as much scientific data as possible. Commander Velter had argued with them for an hour before giving up. He said humans were too stubborn and curious for their own good. The station now felt empty and quiet. The lights were dimmed to save power. Most of the equipment had been shut down, except for essential systems. The few remaining crew members moved through the corridors like ghosts. "Sensor contact," Mira announced from the communication center. "The object is now within visual range of our telescopes." Junho ran to the observation deck where the station's most powerful telescope was located. He had been preparing for this moment for hours. All the recording equipment was ready. All the sensors were calibrated and aimed at the right coordinates. When he activated the telescope display, he saw something that made him stop breathing. The albino dragon was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It was shaped like a massive serpent, but it seemed to be made of light and shadow instead of solid matter. Its scales were pure white, and they glowed with their own inner light. The creature was at least 50 kilometers long and maybe 10 kilometers wide at its thickest point. But the most disturbing thing about it was the way space seemed to bend around it. Stars that should have been behind it were visible through its body, and stars that should have been in front of it appeared to be behind it. It was like looking at something that existed in more dimensions than the human mind could understand. "Mira, you need to see this," he called over the intercom. She arrived at the observation deck a few minutes later. When she saw the display, her face went pale, but she did not look away. "It is not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" "Something more like a normal creature." This looks like it is made of energy or some kind of exotic matter. Look at these readings, Junho pointed to the sensor displays. Its mass is constantly changing. Sometimes it appears to have the mass of a small moon. Other times it barely registers on our sensors. And the gravitational effects are impossible. It is bending space in ways that should not be possible for something that size. They watched the entity approach for another hour. As it got closer, the effects on the remaining crew became worse. Commander Velter was now in the medical bay being treated for severe stress reactions. His scales were falling off faster than they could regrow. Kafara had retreated to her quarters and was making sounds like breaking crystal. Boran could barely maintain a solid form. "Bridge to all stations," came Dr. Seville's voice over the intercom. "All non-human personnel are now experiencing severe psychological distress. Recommend immediate evacuation of all remaining crew. What about you and Myra?" she continued. "Are you experiencing any unusual symptoms?" Junho thought about it. He felt excited and curious and maybe a little nervous. But he did not feel the terror and despair that seemed to be affecting everyone else. "No symptoms," he reported. "We are both functioning normally." "That is impossible. Every other species in the galaxy has reported severe reactions to proximity to the entity. You should be experiencing nightmares, hallucinations, and overwhelming fear." "Maybe humans are different," Myra suggested. "Different how?" "We evolved separately from the rest of the galactic community. Maybe we do not have the same instinctive responses." Before Dr. Seville could respond, the station's alarm system activated. A deep rumbling sound filled the corridors. The lights flickered and went out for several seconds before the emergency power came online. "What was that?" Junho asked. "Unknown," came a weak voice from the bridge. It was Commander Velter, but he sounded like he was speaking from very far away. "The entity has reached the outer edge of our sensor range. It is beginning some kind of scanning procedure." Junho and Mira ran to the bridge. They found Commander Velter collapsed in his command chair. His breathing was shallow and his scales were now almost transparent. Kafara was there, but her crystalline form was so pale it was almost invisible. Boran was just a thin cloud of gas floating near the ceiling. "We need to get them to the escape pods," Mira said. "No," Commander Velter whispered. "Must monitor the entity. Must record its activities for the Galactic Council." "You can barely stand up," Junho pointed out. "Duty requires it." At that moment, every screen on the bridge lit up with the same image. The albino dragon filled the displays. But now it was much closer, and they could see details that had not been visible before. The creature's eyes were the size of small moons. They glowed with a cold white light that seemed to see everything. Its mouth was large enough to swallow the entire station, and along its body were patterns that looked like writing in a language that no one had ever seen before. Then something happened that made everyone on the bridge freeze in terror. The creature spoke, but it did not speak with sound. The voice came directly into their minds. It bypassed their ears and their communication devices and spoke directly to their consciousness. The voice was ancient and powerful and filled with the weight of millions of years. "I am the harvester of hubris," the voice said. "I am the silence bringer. I am the final lesson for those who dare to reach beyond their ordained place in the cosmic order." Commander Velter fell out of his chair and lay motionless on the floor. Kafara's crystalline form cracked and pieces fell off like breaking glass. Boran's gaseous form completely dispersed and had to be contained by the life support system, but Junho and Mira remained standing. They looked at each other in amazement. "Did you hear that?" Junho asked. "Yes, but I am not sure how." "I am the judge of advancement," the voice continued. "I am the keeper of balance. I come to those who grow too proud, too advanced, too dangerous to the natural order." It is talking about the research station, Mira realized. It thinks we are too advanced. I have watched this station, the entity said. I have seen species from 12 different worlds working together, sharing knowledge, growing stronger. This is not permitted. The screens now showed the entity moving closer to the station. It was only a few thousand kilometers away and getting closer rapidly. Why is it not permitted? Junho asked out loud. The mental voice paused. For the first time since it had started speaking, there was silence. You dare to question me, the voice said. But now there was something different in it. Not anger exactly, but surprise. I am a scientist, Junho said. I question everything. That is how we learn. You are a mortal creature from a young species. You have existed for less than the blink of an eye in cosmic time. You do not have the right to question forces beyond your understanding. Maybe not, Junho said. But I have the right to try to understand them. Mira stepped forward. What gives you the right to judge other species? Who made you the keeper of balance? Again there was silence from the entity. On the screens they could see it had stopped, moving toward the station. It was just floating in space looking at them with those enormous glowing eyes. I am ancient, the voice said finally. I have existed since before your son was born. I have seen civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy. I have learned that when species become too advanced too quickly, they become dangerous. They upset the balance. They threaten the stability of the cosmos. How do they threaten it? Junho asked. They create weapons that can destroy stars. They develop technologies that can rip holes in space and time. They grow proud and believe. They can become gods. But they also create art and music and literature, Mira pointed out. They explore new worlds and make new discoveries. They help each other and work together to solve problems. That is irrelevant. The risk is too great. Says who? Junho asked. You. One entity making decisions for billions of beings across the galaxy. How is that balance? For the third time the mental voice fell silent. The entity's eyes seemed to focus more intently on the station. On the screens they could see it was studying them with what looked like curiosity rather than anger. You are strange, the voice said. All other species flee from me in terror. They beg for mercy. They accept their fate. But you question me. You debate with me. You show no fear. Should we be afraid? Myra asked. Yes, I am death. I am the end of civilizations. I am the final silence that comes to all who grow too proud. Junho looked at the screens showing the massive entity. He looked at his alien crewmates who were unconscious with terror. He looked at Mira who was standing beside him, facing down. A cosmic horror with nothing but curiosity and determination. And then he did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He laughed. It was not nervous laughter or the laughter of someone who had lost their mind. It was genuine amusement. The kind of laughter that comes when you realize something is ridiculous. You think this is amusing? The ancient voice asked. There was confusion in it now. A little, Junho said. You call yourself the judge of advancement, but you have been stopping advancement for millions of years. You call yourself the keeper of balance, but you are the one upsetting the balance. You are like a parent who never lets their children grow up. The albino dragon's mental voice was silent. On the screens they could see the entity's massive form shifting and changing. The patterns along its body were glowing brighter. Its eyes were focused entirely on the station now. Explain yourself, the voice demanded. Evolution requires change. Junho said, growth requires risk. Yes, some species might become dangerous, but some might also become wonderful. By stopping all advancement, you guarantee that the galaxy will never reach its full potential. And you believe your species should be allowed to reach this potential. I believe all species should be allowed to try, including yours. Mine. When was the last time you tried to grow or change or learn something new? You have been doing the same thing for millions of years. Maybe it is time for you to evolve too. The silence that followed was the longest yet. The entity floated motionless, in space, staring at the station with those ancient eyes. On the bridge, the unconscious alien crew members began to stir slightly, as if the psychological pressure was lessening. "You are either very wise or very foolish," the voice said finally. "Probably both," Junho admitted. "But that is what makes us human." The albino dragon had been silent for almost an hour. It floated in space near the station like a massive sculpture made of light and shadow. Its eyes remained fixed on the bridge where Junho and Mira waited. The alien crew members were still, unconscious, but their vital signs had improved slightly. "Why do you not fear me?" the ancient voice finally asked. It sounded different now, less commanding and more curious. "Fear is not useful in this situation," Junho said. "You are either going to destroy us or you are not. Being afraid will not change that outcome. But fear is the natural response to danger. All species have evolved to fear things that can harm them. Humans evolved to be curious about things that can harm them," Myra said. "On our home planet, the most dangerous creatures were often the most interesting ones to study." "Tell me about your evolution," the entity said. "I have studied thousands of species across the galaxy, but your psychological profile is unlike anything I have encountered." Junho found this request fascinating. The cosmic horror that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years wanted to learn about human evolution. It was like a university lecture, except the student could destroy solar systems. "Humans evolved on a planet called Earth," he began. "We were not the strongest or fastest or most dangerous species on our world. We survived by being adaptable and curious and stubborn." "Stubborn how?" "We refused to accept that we could not do things. Other species might see a mountain and think it cannot be climbed. Humans see a mountain and think about different ways to climb it, even when climbing it might kill you. Especially then. The more dangerous something is, the more interesting it becomes to us." The entity was quiet for a moment. "This explains your reaction to me. I represent ultimate danger, so you find me ultimately interesting." "Exactly," Mira said. "You are the most scientifically significant discovery in galactic history. Of course we want to study you. Study me. You want to understand how I function. Yes, what are you made of? How do you travel faster than light? How do you affect the minds of other species? How long have you existed? Where did you come from?" These are not the questions other species ask me. What do they ask? They beg for mercy. They offer me tribute. They promise to change their ways. If I spare them, they do not ask how I work. Junho thought about this. Maybe that is why they never survive their encounters with you. They are focused on avoiding death instead of understanding life. I do not understand the distinction. Fear makes you focus on short-term survival. Curiosity makes you focus on long-term growth. Fear asks, how can I avoid this problem? Curiosity asks, how can I solve this problem? The patterns along the entity's body began to glow brighter. "You believe I am a problem to be solved rather than a force to be avoided." "Every challenge is a problem to be solved," Mira said. "That is the human way." "Show me," the entity said. "Explain to me how you would solve the problem of my existence." This was not what Junho had expected. He looked at Mira, who shrugged. They were being asked to develop a solution to the albino dragon by the albino dragon itself. "Well," Junho said slowly, "first we need to understand your motivation. You said you prevent species from becoming too advanced because they might become dangerous. But how do you decide what is too advanced?" "Experience. I have observed the patterns of galactic civilizations for millions of years. I know the signs of dangerous development." "But your sample size is limited," Mira pointed out. "You have been interfering with galactic development for so long that you have never seen what happens when species are allowed to advance naturally." "I have seen enough war, destruction, chaos. But you have also prevented cooperation, peaceful advancement, scientific breakthroughs that could benefit everyone. The risk is too great. According to who? Junho asked. You are making decisions based on incomplete data. You are like a doctor who prevents all exercise because some people get injured. While exercising, the entity's form shifted slightly. The white light along its scales flickered like a candle in the wind. What would you have me do? Allow civilizations to develop weapons that could destroy the galaxy. Allow civilizations to develop wisdom along with their weapons, Mira suggested. Give them the chance to prove they can be responsible, and if they prove they cannot be responsible, then intervene, but give them the chance first. This is what you humans would do. This is what we are already doing, Junho said. Look at this station. 12 different species working together, sharing knowledge, learning from each other. No one is building weapons or trying to conquer anyone else. Yet. Maybe. Never. Maybe cooperation is the natural result of true advancement. Maybe species only become violent when they are afraid or desperate or isolated. The entity was silent for a long time. Its eyes moved back and forth between Junho and Mira as if it was studying them carefully. You suggest that my actions have been preventing the very outcome I claim to desire, it said finally. We suggest that balance cannot be maintained through force, Mira said. True balance comes from understanding and cooperation. I have never considered this perspective. When was the last time you had a conversation with someone who disagreed with you? Junho asked. Again, there was a long silence. Never. All other species either worship me or fear me. None have ever debated with me. Maybe that is part of the problem. You have been making decisions in isolation for millions of years. Even the wisest being in the universe needs someone to challenge their assumptions. You believe you can challenge my assumptions. We can try. We might be wrong, but at least we can offer a different point of view. The entity's massive form began to move closer to the station. But instead of the menacing approach they had seen before, this seemed more like curiosity. The dragon was positioning itself to get a better look at them. Tell me more about this cooperation you speak of, it said. How does it work when species have different needs and goals? It is not easy, Junho admitted. Look at our crew. Commander Velter is focused on security and following protocols. Kefara wants to make new discoveries. Dr. Seville wants to keep everyone healthy. Sometimes their goals conflict. How do you resolve these conflicts? We talk about them. We find compromises. We remember that we all want the same basic things: safety, knowledge, purpose. And if talking fails, then we try harder. We bring in mediators. We look for creative solutions. We remember that everyone is trying their best. This seems inefficient compared to simply imposing order. It is inefficient, Mira agreed. But it is also more flexible, more creative, more likely to find solutions that no one had thought of before. Give me an example. Junho thought for a moment. Last month we had a problem with the life support system. The atmosphere was becoming toxic to 3 different species, but safe for the other 9. Commander Velter wanted to evacuate the 3 affected species. Dr. Seville wanted to change the entire atmosphere to help them. Kefara wanted to move them to a separate section of the station. What did you do? We combined all 3 ideas. We created separate atmospheric zones for different species. We installed better air circulation between zones. And we developed emergency evacuation procedures in case the system failed. The solution was better than any single approach. And everyone was satisfied, not completely. But everyone was willing to accept the compromise because they helped create it. The entity's form pulsed with brighter light. This is the cooperation you believe should be encouraged across the galaxy. Yes, different species working together, sharing their strengths, covering for each other's weaknesses. And you believe this would lead to peace rather than war? We believe it would lead to both, Mira said. There would still be conflicts, but there would also be more ways to resolve them peacefully. You admit there would still be violence. Some, but less than there is now. And when violence did occur, it would be limited rather than galaxy-wide. How can you be certain? We cannot be certain, Junho said. But uncertainty is not a reason to avoid trying. It is a reason to be careful and thoughtful about how we try. The entity moved even closer to the station. Now it was close enough that they could see individual scales along its body. Each scale was the size of a building and covered with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. I have spent millions of years preventing uncertainty, the voice said. I have imposed order through fear and destruction. But I have never created anything. I have never built anything. I have never helped anything grow. It is not too late. To start, Myra said gently, I am ancient, set in my ways. What you suggest would require me to change everything about how I operate. Change is hard, Junho agreed. But it is also how we grow, how we become better than we were before. And if I am wrong, if I allow advancement and it leads to the destruction of the galaxy, then we will face that problem when it comes, together, all of us working to find a solution, including me, especially you. You have knowledge and experience that no one else possesses. You could be the greatest teacher in galactic history instead of its greatest destroyer. The silence that followed was different from the others. It felt thoughtful rather than threatening. The entity's eyes were no longer focused on the station with predatory intensity. Instead, they seemed to be looking inward, as if it was examining its own thoughts and motivations. You have given me much to consider, the voice said finally. I must think about what you have said. Take all the time you need, Junho said. We will be here. You are not afraid I will decide to destroy you while I think. If you were going to destroy us, you would have done it already, Mira said. The fact that you are thinking about it means you are already changing. Perhaps, the entity said. Or perhaps I am simply delaying the inevitable. Maybe, but delay is better than immediate destruction. It gives hope a chance to grow. The dragon's massive form began to drift away from the station. Not fleeing, but creating distance for contemplation. I will return, the voice said, when I have decided what kind of entity I want to be. As they watched the albino dragon move away into the darkness of space, the alien crew members on the bridge began to wake up. Commander Velter opened his eyes and looked around in confusion. Kefara's crystalline form began to glow with faint colors again. Boron slowly reformed from the dispersed gas that had been floating near the ceiling. What happened, Commander? Velter asked weakly. Where is the entity? It left, Junho said. It is thinking about some things we discussed. You discussed things with the albino dragon. Yes, it was very educational. Commander Velter stared at him in amazement. You had an educational conversation with a cosmic horror that has destroyed civilizations. Apparently so. Humans, Commander Velter said as he struggled to sit up, are the strangest species in the galaxy. 6 hours had passed since the albino dragon left to consider their conversation. The alien crew members had recovered enough to return to their duties, but they moved carefully as if they expected the entity to return at any moment. Commander, Velter had called an emergency meeting to discuss what had happened. Let me understand this correctly, he said as he paced back and forth in the conference room. His scales were still pale, but they were starting to return to their normal green color. You two humans had a philosophical debate with the most feared entity in galactic history and convinced it to reconsider its entire purpose. We had a conversation. Junho corrected. We shared different perspectives, and it just listened to you. A cosmic horror that has destroyed thousands of civilizations. Just listen to two humans explain cooperation and growth. It seemed interested in learning something new, Mira said. Maybe it was tired of always doing the same thing. Dr. Seville looked up from her medical scanner. She had been checking the psychological effects of the encounter on different crew members. The interesting thing is that humans showed no negative effects at all. Every other species in galactic history has reported severe trauma from encounters with the entity. But you two seem completely unaffected. Maybe because we were not afraid, Junho suggested. But why were you not afraid? Kefara asked. Her crystalline form was now glowing with curious yellow light. The entity projects an aura of primal terror. It triggers the deepest fear responses in all sentient minds. All sentient minds except human minds apparently, Boran said. His gaseous form had stabilized but was still more compact than usual. Perhaps your species lacks the proper fear responses. We have fear responses, Mira said. We just apply them differently. We are afraid of things that can actually hurt. US in practical ways, wild animals, natural disasters, disease. But we are not afraid of things just because they are big or ancient or claim to have power over us. The albino dragon can actually hurt you, Commander Velter pointed out. It can destroy this entire station. Yes, but being afraid of it will not stop it from doing that, Junho said. Fear makes you focus on avoiding the threat. Curiosity makes you focus on understanding the threat. Understanding is more useful. Before anyone could respond, the station's alarm system activated. Red lights flashed throughout the corridors, and a warning signal echoed through the ship. Long-range sensors detect approaching object, came the voice of the night shift officer. Same configuration as previous contact. Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. The alien crew members immediately tensed. Commander Velter's scales began to darken again. Kefara's colors shifted toward fearful white. Boran's form started to become unstable. It is returning, Dr. Seville whispered. Should we evacuate? Someone asked. Where would we go? Commander Velter replied. If it wants to find us, it will find US anywhere in this system. Junho and Mira looked at each other. They were both thinking the same thing. The entity had said it would return when it had decided what kind of being it wanted to be. That decision was apparently made. We should go to the bridge, Junho said. If it wants to communicate with us again, we should be ready. You want to talk to it again? Boran asked in amazement. If it will listen, Mira said. They went to the bridge and waited. Through the main view screen, they could see the approaching form of the albino dragon. It looked the same as before, but something about its movement seemed different, less predatory, more purposeful, but in a different way. As it got closer, the psychological effects began again. The alien crew members started showing signs of distress, but this time the effects seemed weaker. Commander Velter remained conscious. Kefara's colors dimmed, but did not disappear completely. Boran maintained his form, although it became more compact. Interesting, Dr. Seville observed as she monitored her medical sensors. The psychological pressure is approximately 60%. Less than it was during the first encounter. Maybe the entity is learning to control its effects, Junho suggested. Or maybe you are all becoming more resistant to them, Mira added. The albino dragon stopped just outside the station's immediate vicinity. Its massive eyes focused on the bridge where they waited. Then the familiar mental voice spoke directly into their consciousness. I have considered what you told me, it said. For 6 hours I have examined my actions over the past 1,000,000 years. I have thought about the civilizations I have destroyed and the potential they might have achieved. What did you decide? Junho asked. I have decided that you are either completely correct or completely wrong. And the only way to determine which is to test your theory. What kind of test? Mira asked. I will allow this research station to continue its work, I will observe what happens when species cooperate without interference. If your cooperation leads to advancement that benefits the galaxy, I will reconsider my methods. And if it leads to problems? Commander Velter asked. His voice was weak, but he was still able to speak. Then I will resume my previous role as judge of advancement. But I will give cooperation a chance to prove itself. Junho felt a surge of excitement. This was more than he had hoped for. The entity was willing to change its behavior based on evidence rather than fear. How long will this test last? He asked. As long as necessary, decades, centuries. I am patient. And you will not interfere during this time. I will observe. I will learn. But I will not act unless I see clear evidence that cooperation is leading to galactic destruction. What would count as clear evidence? Mira asked. The development of weapons, capable of destroying multiple star systems. Wars that threaten to spread across significant portions of the galaxy. The creation of technologies that could damage the fundamental structure of space and time. Those seem like reasonable limits, Junho said. I thought you would approve. But there is one more thing. The entity's form moved closer to the station. Its voice in their minds became more intense. If this experiment fails, if cooperation leads to the kind of destruction I have spent millions of years preventing, then I will not simply destroy the civilizations responsible. I will destroy every species that participated in the cooperation, including humanity. The bridge became very quiet. Even Junho and Mira felt the weight of that threat. You would judge all species based on the actions of a few, Commander Velter asked. You have convinced me that species should be judged collectively based on their cooperation. If cooperation proves dangerous, then all who cooperated will bear responsibility. That seems harsh, Mira said. It is the price of the experiment you requested. High stakes require high responsibility. Junho thought about this. The entity was offering them a chance to prove that cooperation could work on a galactic scale. But if they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic for everyone involved. We accept, he said. Junho, Commander Velter said in alarm. You cannot speak for all the species in the galaxy. I can speak for this station. And this station represents cooperation between 12 different civilizations. If we can make it work here, maybe others can make it work elsewhere. And if we cannot make it work, then we will have learned something important. Knowledge is always valuable, even when it is uncomfortable. The albino dragon's mental voice carried what might have been amusement. You remain unafraid even when facing the potential destruction of your entire species. Fear will not help us succeed, Junho said. Only careful work and honest cooperation will do that. Very well, the experiment begins now. I will observe. From a distance, you will not see me, but I will be watching. Prove to me that cooperation can create something better than the order I have imposed. The entity began to move away from the station. But before it disappeared completely, it spoke one more time. One final question for the humans who do not fear cosmic horrors. What makes you so certain that cooperation will succeed where force has failed? Junho and Mira looked at each other. Then Junho did something that amazed everyone on the bridge, including himself. He laughed again. The same genuine amusement that had surprised the entity during their first encounter. We are not certain, he said. That is what makes it interesting. The mental voice was silent for a moment. Then it carried something that definitely sounded like laughter. Ancient, cosmic, but genuine. Humans, the albino dragon said as it disappeared into the darkness between stars, are indeed the strangest species in the galaxy. Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs. Commander Velter looked at Junho and Mira with an expression that mixed admiration with complete bewilderment. Did you just make a cosmic horror laugh? He asked. Apparently, Mira said. And commit our entire species to a test that could result in galactic destruction if we fail. That too, Junho admitted. Humans, Commander Velter said as he sat down heavily in his command chair, are either the bravest species in the universe or the most insane. Probably both, Junho said cheerfully. But that is what makes us useful. 6 months later, the research Station Kithara had become a model of interspecies cooperation. Word of their encounter with the albino dragon had spread throughout the galactic community. Some species were terrified that humans had angered the legendary entity. Others were curious about how the humans had survived the encounter. But many were interested in the idea of true cooperation without fear of cosmic judgment. New research stations were being built. Joint scientific projects were being proposed. For the first time in galactic history, species were working together. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to see what they could accomplish. Junho often stood at the observation windows and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the albino dragon was watching and learning. The test was ongoing, and the results were still uncertain. But he was not afraid of uncertainty. Uncertainty meant possibilities, and possibilities were what made life interesting. Sometimes in the deepest darkness between the stars, he thought he could see a faint white glow. The cosmic horror that had learned to laugh. The ancient judge that had decided to become a student. The galaxy was changing, growing, and no one was laughing in the dark, except the humans who had taught a dragon to smile.